I want to say something that is going to be briefly uncomfortable. And I need you to stay with me through the uncomfortable part because the other side of it is actually quite useful. Your wellness program might be making things worse. Not because wellness is bad, not because you made a bad decision when you implemented it, but because there is a category error built into most workplace wellness initiatives that means they are by design solving the wrong problem. And more than that, in some organizations, the wellness program is functioning as evidence that the organization has addressed psychosocial risk, when in fact, it's done nothing of the sort. That's a compliance problem. It's also a human one. Today, we're going to talk about the difference. Welcome back to Unapologetic Edge. I'm Philippa Scott. We're 3 episodes in to this talk about psychosocial safety. And I want to take a moment to name what we're building here because it matters for how you use these episodes. The first one was the case for urgency, episode 9, just recently was the map. And, it was the 14 psychosocial hazard categories and what they look like in practice. This episode is about the category error that most organizations are making in their response and why fixing that error is the most important thing you can do before you spend another dollar on wellbeing initiatives. Let's go. Here's the category error. Psychosocial hazards are structural. Wellness programs are individual. A structural problem requires a structural solution. An individual solution applied to a structural problem does not fix the structure. It helps the individual cope with the structure, which is a different thing entirely, and a significantly less effective one. Let me make that concrete. Imagine a factory where a machine has a fault that regularly sprains workers' wrists. The organization's response is to offer physiotherapy. The physiotherapy is excellent. Workers recover fast. Some of them learn stretches that reduce their discomfort between sessions, but the machine is still faulty. Nobody would look at that scenario and say the organization has managed the hazard. They've managed the recovery. The hazard is ongoing. Now swap the faulty machine for an unrealistic workload, or a manager whose behavior creates a sustained threat response in everyone who reports to them, or a culture where raising concerns is implicitly understood to be career limiting. The wellness program is the physiotherapy. It is not nothing. It provides genuine support to individuals who are suffering. That matters, but it does not fix the machine. And under the current psychosocial safety legislation, fixing the machine is the obligation, not supporting people to cope with it. Beyond the category error, there are 3 specific ways that wellness programs can actively make the psychosocial risk picture worse. Not always, but commonly enough that they're worth naming. The first is displacement of accountability. When an organization implements a wellness program, it creates a narrative. We're taking care of our people. That narrative, if it's not accompanied by genuine structural change, becomes a way of shifting the focus of the problem from the organization to the individual. The message, often unintentionally but frequently received, is we've given you the tools. If you're struggling, that's on you. That is the opposite to psychological safety. And it is particularly corrosive for people who are already in a nervous system state that makes self-advocacy difficult. The second is resilience as a cover story. Resilience training is enormously popular. It's also, in many workplace contexts, being used in a way that's functionally backwards. Resilience is a genuine capacity, the ability to move through adversity and return to baseline. It's valuable and is buildable, but resilience is meant to be a resource for navigating unavoidable difficulty. When it becomes a mechanism for enduring avoidable difficulty, something has gone wrong. Teaching someone to be more resilient in a fundamentally unsafe environment doesn't make the environment safer. It makes the person better at tolerating harm. That is not a well-being outcome. That is harm with better packaging. The organisations I've seen use resilience training most aggressively are often the ones with the most significant structural psychosocial hazards. The training is not incidental to that. It is frequently a substitute for addressing the hazards that are generating the distress. The third is the signal it sends about what is normal. When an organization's response to psychosocial risk is individual support, that communicates something about what the organization considers normal. Stress at this level is normal. Working at this pace is normal. Feeling like this is normal. Over time, that communication recalibrates people's sense of what they should be able to tolerate, which means the early warning signals that would have prompted someone to raise a hazard get reclassified as personal weakness and managed privately, which means the organization loses access to precisely the information it needs to actually manage its psychosocial risk. I want to be clear that I'm not arguing against EAPs, counseling access, mindfulness programs, or any of the other tools that sit underneath the wellness umbrella. I offer them. People need the support, and organizations should provide it. What I'm arguing is that those things need to sit downstream of a genuine structural risk management process, not instead of one. The question to ask about any wellbeing initiative, is this reducing the hazard or is this helping people manage the experience of the hazard? Both are legitimate, but only the first one discharges your legal obligation and only the first one actually makes your organization safer. In practice, the structural approach looks like this. You identify which of the 14 psychosocial hazard categories exist in your organization using evidence rather than assumption. You assess their severity and reach. You design controls that address the conditions generating the hazard, not just the symptoms it's producing. You review whether those controls are working, and you do that systematically, repeatedly, with documentation and with genuine leadership accountability. That is a different exercise to booking a yoga instructor for Tuesday lunchtimes. Both things can coexist, but one of them is psychosocial safety management and one of them is a perk. Knowing which is which matters because right now most organizations are spending significant money on the perk and calling it the management. Here's the question I want to leave you with today. If someone asked you to show them your psychosocial risk management process, what would you show them? Not your EAP contact, not your wellbeing calendar, not your engagement survey results, your risk management process, the documented systematic approach to identifying, assessing, controlling, and reviewing psychosocial hazards. If the answer is you'd need to build one first, that's not a problem. That's information, and it's the right starting point. Next week, we're going into the nervous system science, why the human stress response is incompatible with the way most workplaces currently operate, and what nervous system informed leadership actually means in practice. It's the episode that tends to change how people understand everything else. 2 things before you go. The burnout audit is in the show notes. If you listened to today's episode and found yourself thinking about your own experience of the structures you work in, the audit is worth 5 minutes of your time. It maps which dimensions of psychosocial load are highest in your own system right now. That's useful data whether you're a leader managing a team or a P&C professional managing a function. And if this episode has landed, share it with the person in your organization who's most likely to still think the yoga class is the strategy. Do them the kindness of a slightly uncomfortable podcast episode. It's cheaper than a work cover claim. I'm Philippa Scott. This is Unapologetic Edge. See you next week.